Discovery of the ancient temple. The golden rays of the setting sun filtered through the dense canopy of the rainforest, casting a mystical glow on the damp forest floor. This jungle had never been officially documented, or at least, no one who had entered ever lived to tell the tale. Kai Reynolds, a renowned photographer and explorer, had never been one to believe in myths. But standing before a massive stone gateway, covered in ancient moss and symbols unlike any language he had ever seen, he felt something he had never felt before, a sense of unease. This was no ordinary temple. Kai knelt, running his fingers lightly over the cold stone, tracing the intricate carvings. The symbols seemed almost alive. What am I standing in front of? A gust of wind blew through the jungle, carrying a scent that was alien, unfamiliar, as if it did not belong to this world. He glanced at his gear. His compass spun wildly. His GPS lost all signal. His instincts screamed for him to turn back, but his curiosity would never allow that. Kai raised his camera, adjusting the lens, and took a shot. The flash went off, and everything changed. A low rumble vibrated through the air. The cracks in the stone began to glow. Kai's breath caught. Had he just activated something? Faint blue light pulsed through the carvings, as if the temple was waking up after millennia of slumber. The air thickened, pressing down on his chest. His survival instincts kicked in. Get out! Now, but his explorer's instinct, the part of him that had always chased the unknown, kept him rooted in place. He pulled a pen light from his pocket, gently touching one of the glowing symbols. A burst of energy erupted from the gateway. The ground trembled. The air filled with dust, clouding his vision. Kai instinctively turned on his flashlight, but the beam of light barely cut through the swirling mist now seeping out from inside the temple. A cold breeze rushed past him, unnatural in this tropical climate. A chill crawled down his spine. This was not built by humans. Kai hesitated. Half of him wanted to run. The other half, the part that had led him to discover places no one dared to explore, pushed him forward. He drew his multi-tool knife, cautiously stepping through the now open gateway. Inside, an expansive chamber revealed itself. The vaulted ceilings stretched impossibly high, decorated with symbols pulsing with energy. Massive stone pillars, their surfaces carved with luminescent veins of unknown material, stood like silent guardians. The air was too still. There was no dust, no decay, as if this place had never been abandoned, as if it had been waiting. Kai moved cautiously, scanning the chamber. Then he saw them, the murals. They weren't depictions of humans. Towering beings, their glowing eyes staring ahead, surrounded a pillar of light, as if performing some ritual. And at the center of the mural, a woman. Her silver eyes shone amidst a swirling vortex of energy, a halo-like aura surrounding her. This was no mythological tale. This was a record of something real. Beneath the mural, a series of symbols glowed brighter than the rest. Kai traced his fingers over them. The moment he touched the stone, a surge of energy rippled through the air. The ground split open beneath him. A chilling mist rose from the depths below. Then, a voice, soft yet commanding, like a whisper through the cosmos. Who dares awaken me? Kai froze. His pulse thundered in his ears. He scanned the room, searching for the source of the voice. Then, she stepped out from the mist, a woman. Her skin shimmered, reflecting the faint glow of the temple as if she were made of living crystal. Her silver eyes bore into his, carrying wisdom beyond time itself, and behind her, a faint luminescent tail drifted through the air. How long had she been here? Kai swallowed hard. He had no idea what he had just unleashed, but one thing was certain. His life would never be the same again. The awakening of the goddess. The air inside the temple grew thick, heavy, as if time itself had slowed. Kai stood frozen, his grip tightening around the camera dangling from his neck. The woman before him, she wasn't human. The soft blue glow from the temple's walls reflected on her translucent skin, creating an otherworldly aura, as if she wasn't entirely part of this reality. She stared at him, not the way a person looks at another person, but as if she was seeing through him. Kai swallowed hard. Who are you? She blinked, her movement slightly delayed, as if adjusting to existence itself. Her silver eyes shimmered like distant stars, yet held no immediate emotion. Then finally she spoke. Her voice whispered through the chamber, as if carried by an ancient wind. I do not remember. Kai frowned. You don't remember. You? She stood still for a long moment, her delicate fingers brushing against the fabric of her garment, as if feeling it for the first time. I know. I have slept for a long time. I know. I do not belong here. She lifted her gaze to meet his again, her silver eyes now laced with uncertainty. But I do not remember who I am. A shiver ran down Kai's spine. This was wrong. Something was wrong. The air around them shifted. The walls of the temple trembled, as if an invisible force had been released. She was radiating energy, and she didn't even realize it. Kai instinctively took a step back. Listen, I don't know who you are or how you got here, but I think... His words were cut short as the ground beneath them rumbled violently. Dust fell from the ancient ceiling. Cracks began to spread across the stone floor. The glowing symbols on the walls flared brighter, pulsing with an almost sentient awareness. Then, a flash of memory tore through Kai's mind. A world unlike any he had ever seen. A vast empire of light, shining citadels reaching into the heavens. Then, in an instant, darkness consumed everything, a void swallowing an entire civilization. Kai stumbled back, his breath caught in his throat. The woman clutched her head, gasping as if the same vision had crashed into her. No, no, it cannot be. Her voice trembled, fear creeping into it. Kai acted on instinct. He reached out, gripping her shoulders. You remember something, don't you? She looked up at him, and this time, there was fear in her eyes. They are coming. A distant explosion echoed through the jungle. The air itself cracked. Kai spun around, eyes widening. Beyond the temple's entrance, a scarlet glow slashed through the dense forest. A massive cylindrical craft hovered above the treetops, its metallic hull pulsing with red energy. Dark figures descended from the mist. They weren't human. Tall, armored beings, their crimson eyes burning through the dim light. A voice, one that did not come from a speaker, but directly into Kai's mind, spoke. You cannot run forever, Nyra. Kai flinched. The voice didn't just echo in the air. It resonated inside his mind. His chest tightened. He had never heard this voice before, but somehow it felt familiar. Nyra turned to him, her silver eyes widening. You heard it too? Kai felt his blood freeze. He turned toward the woman beside him. Her hands shook, not out of weakness, but because she remembered now. She was Nyra, and they had come to take her back. Kai didn't think. He grabbed Nyra's wrist, pulling her. We have to go. Now! She hesitated for just a second, still overwhelmed by the rush of memories. Then she ran. Blazing red beams sliced through the air, barely missing them. Heat scorched the ground where they had stood moments ago. They raced through the temple ruins, weaving between fallen stone pillars, dodging enemy fire. Kai panted, adrenaline flooding his system. Who the hell are they? Nyra barely turned her head as she sprinted alongside him. They are the ones who destroyed my home. Kai clenched his jaw. Then we're not letting them take you. They plunged into the thick jungle, but deep inside, Kai knew. This wasn't just a chase. They weren't running from humans. They were being hunted by something that did not belong to this world. The secret of Nyra rain poured down. The cold drops pelted the dense jungle, mixing with the shadows that seemed to close in around them. Above, the sky was no longer silent. It was being torn apart by the roaring engines of their pursuers. Kai and Nyra raced through the thick foliage, their breaths ragged, feet slipping over the wet earth. Kai had never imagined a day would come where he'd be running for his life from an alien force. Yet here he was, and there was no time to think. Move! Faster! Kai yanked Nyra's arm, guiding her deeper into the jungle. They'll find us if we don't disappear. Now! Nyra gasped, struggling to keep up. Then she stumbled. I can't. Kai stopped, turning back to her. Raindrops slid down her pale skin, her breath coming in short, strained gasps. Sweat mixed with the rain on her forehead, despite the cold. Something was wrong. This wasn't just exhaustion. She was losing control. Nyra, what's happening to you? She clutched her head, her silver eyes flickering with an unearthly glow. The memories! They're coming back! Before Kai could react, a pulse of unseen energy erupted from Nyra. The world around them warped, and suddenly, everything changed. The jungle was gone. Kai found himself standing in the middle of a radiant city, towers of crystal-like structures stretching high into a luminous sky. People walked the streets, tall, graceful beings with the same silver eyes as Nyra, dressed in garments that shimmered like woven stardust. Kai's breath caught in his throat. Where am I? He couldn't move. This wasn't real. This was Nyra's memory. The sky above shifted, deep blues turning crimson red. Suddenly, flashes of light ignited the heavens. Kai looked up. Emerging from the darkness of space, massive warships appeared, their obsidian hulls swallowing the skyline. A swarm of smaller attack vessels descended like a plague. Then, the first strike fell. Blazing red energy beams rained down, obliterating entire districts in an instant. Crystal towers crumbled like sand. People screamed, running, falling, disappearing into waves of crimson energy. Kai felt his stomach twist in horror. No! He turned and saw her, Nyra. But she wasn't alone. A tall man, his silver hair flowing, his eyes identical to hers, was running toward her. Then, a red beam speared through his chest. Kai's body tensed. Before he could process it, the memory shattered. Kai gasped. He was back in the jungle, back in the rain. His hands were still gripping Nyra's shoulders, his breath unsteady. She trembled, her silver eyes wide with realization. Kai swallowed, trying to steady himself. What the hell just happened? Nyra took a shaky breath. I remember now. Her hands clenched into fists, and when she spoke again, her voice quivered with grief. Aurelia was destroyed. Nyra lifted her hand, a faint silver glow flickering over her skin. They came for us. They didn't want to just destroy Aurelia. They wanted our power. Kai's mind raced back to what he had just witnessed. The people, their energy being consumed. What do you mean? Nyra's eyes darkened. They didn't just kill us. They harvested us. They turned us into pure energy. Kai felt his blood run cold. Destruction was one thing, but this was something worse. Who did this? Nyra's jaw tightened. The Dravari. The name etched itself into Kai's memory immediately. He exhaled sharply. Then why did they seal you away? Why didn't they kill you? Nyra hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. Then, she whispered, because I am the key. Kai stiffened. The key to what, Nyra? She looked away as if she didn't want to say it aloud, but finally she spoke. The gate between Earth and Aurelia. Kai's heart skipped a beat. If such a gate existed, then the ones who destroyed Aurelia could come here. Before Kai could react, a thunderous explosion erupted in the distance. A brilliant red light sliced through the stormy sky. Nyra's body tensed. They've found us! Kai felt his heartbeat quicken. We have to move, now! They took off into the darkness, their footsteps splashing against the wet earth. But this time, Kai knew. They weren't just running for their lives. They were running from those who had erased an entire civilization. And if they failed, Earth would be next. The hunting force. The ground trembled in rhythmic pulses. The deep, guttural hum of alien engines rumbled through the jungle, blending with the steady drum of rain against the dense canopy. They had been found. Kai and Nyra ran through the darkened forest, weaving between towering ancient trees. The massive roots twisted over the earth like grasping fingers, threatening to snag their every step. Kai's heartbeat pounded in his ears, his breath coming in short gasps. He didn't have time to stop. Nyra said nothing, but he could feel her grip tightening around his hand, as if she were clinging to something beyond just him, perhaps her last bit of hope. Above them, a crimson light sliced through the night sky, followed by an explosive boom that shook the ground. Kai yanked Nyra behind a massive tree trunk, pressing their bodies against the damp bark. His lungs burned as he whispered, "What the hell are they using?" Nyra peered up through the dense foliage, her silver eyes flashing as she caught sight of a scouting vessel hovering above, its searchlights sweeping through the jungle. Her expression darkened. "They're using energy tracking technology. They can't see us, but—" She swallowed hard. "They can feel me." Kai clenched his jaw. "Then we have to do something." Nyra shut her eyes, her fingers trembling. I can suppress my energy signature, but I need time." Kai exhaled sharply, determination flaring in his eyes. "Then I'll buy you that time." Kai gripped his knife, eyes flicking to the shifting lights cutting through the jungle. He knew he couldn't fight them with brute force, but he could distract them. Turning to Nyra, he spoke firmly. "Do what you have to do. I'll make sure they lose track of us." Nyra's eyes widened slightly. "You can't face them, Kai. They're not human." Kai smirked. "Then I'll prove humans aren't so easy to take down." Before she could stop him, he broke into a sprint. Kai ran in the opposite direction, deliberately stomping on fallen branches to create as much noise as possible. Instantly, the scouting vessel's sensors shifted, locking onto the sound. "Come on, take the bait!" Kai slid behind a tree, pressing himself against the rough bark as the crimson searchlight swept closer. His fingers wrapped around a smooth stone lying on the damp ground. Taking a deep breath, he hurled it into the darkness. The rock clanged loudly against a hollow log in the distance. The ship's sensors immediately locked onto the false sound, adjusting its trajectory. Kai held his breath, waiting. Then, "Found you!" The voice was deep and inhuman, echoing just behind him. Kai whirled around, but it was too late. A dark figure lunged, slamming into him with the force of a freight train. He crashed onto the forest floor, his back smashing against a thick root, pain exploding through his ribs. Kai gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus. A towering figure loomed over him, dressed in obsidian armor, standing well over 7 feet tall, with glowing red eyes that cut through the shadows like burning embers. Kai tried to move, his fingers itching toward his knife, but the alien hunter only tilted its head, studying him the way a cat would study a trapped mouse. Then it spoke. "Did you truly think you could escape?" Kai said nothing, his grip tightening on the knife. The hunter took one slow step forward, its voice dripping with mocking amusement. "How amusing. Humans always wish to play the hero." It raised a hand, an orb of swirling red energy forming in its palm, crackling with deadly force. Kai braced himself, preparing for one final move. Then, a blinding silver light exploded from the side. The alien and Kai were both thrown back by the sheer force of the impact. Kai coughed, dazed, and looked up. Nyra stood before him. Her hands glowed with pure, shimmering light, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She had finished suppressing her energy, and now she was here to fight. The alien enforcer staggered to its feet, its red eyes burning with fury. "So, you finally reveal yourself." Kai's breath caught. "He knows you?" Nyra's gaze hardened, but her hands were trembling slightly. "Who are you?" The alien smirked, taking a slow step forward. "I am the one sent to bring you back." Kai tightened his grip on his knife. "She's not going anywhere." The hunter didn't even acknowledge him. Instead, it simply muttered, almost bored, "You believe a human like you can stop me?" Kai stepped up beside Nyra, muscles tense. She glanced at him, something soft flickering in her expression, a mix of gratitude and concern. "You don't have to do this." Kai just grinned. "Yeah, but I'm doing it anyway." The hunter tilted its head, then, with an almost lazy gesture, lifted a hand. From the shadows, a dozen figures emerged, surrounding them. Nyra inhaled sharply, her silver glow intensifying. Kai's grip on his blade tightened. This battle was only just beginning. Awakening power. The jungle grew eerily silent. The air thickened, pressing down as if the world itself was bracing for an impending storm. Kai planted his feet firmly on the damp earth, his fingers tightening around the small knife, a weapon that felt utterly useless against the enemies closing in. Surrounding them, shadows loomed. The hunters stood in a tight formation, their obsidian armor reflecting the blood-red glow of their piercing eyes. Kai couldn't see their true faces, but he felt their presence, a cold, calculated destruction lurking beneath their visors. The leader stepped forward, the same one who had overpowered Kai earlier. His voice was low, cutting like a blade through the heavy air. "Nyra, stop resisting. You know how this ends." Nyra said nothing, her silver eyes locked onto the enemy, unblinking. A subtle shift rippled through the atmosphere. The jungle rustled, as if whispering in anticipation. The hunters tensed, sensing the unseen danger. The leader narrowed his eyes, then spoke sharply. "She's doing something! Take her now!" They lunged. A blinding wave of silver light erupted from Nyra's body. A shock wave blasted outward, shattering the ground, uprooting trees and sending the hunters flying. Kai felt his lungs compress, an overwhelming force pressing against his chest, almost crushing the air out of him. Through the blinding light, he saw Nyra. She was no longer the same person he had met in the temple. Her entire being pulsed with raw energy, ancient glyphs glowing along her arms, patterns that seemed alive, shifting like constellations moving across the night sky. Her eyes, once soft and uncertain, now burned with absolute power. For the first time, Kai felt a strange fear, not of her, but of what she was capable of. And for the first time, he understood why the hunters feared her. The hunters, despite being thrown aside, were not defeated. They scrambled back to their feet, still disoriented, but unrelenting. Yet their leader remained unshaken. A faint smirk curled at the corner of his lips. "So, you've reclaimed some of your power." Nyra clenched her fists, her glowing aura intensifying. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." The leader chuckled, a sound filled with calm malice. "Good." Then he lifted his hand. A black surge of energy spiraled around his palm, pulsing with something far more sinister than the hunter's usual power. Kai saw Nyra stiffen, her confidence wavering for the first time. She knew this wasn't normal. This wasn't just Dravari technology. Kai turned to her, noticing the slight tremble in her posture. "Nyra, what's wrong?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "He's not one of them." Kai's stomach dropped. "Then, what is he?" Nyra's breath hitched, realization crashing over her. "Something worse." The leader took a single step forward, the space around him distorting, as if reality itself was struggling to contain him. "Ah, so you remember now?" Kai felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Something about the way the jungle seemed to warp around the leader's presence set off every instinct screaming at him to run. Nyra gritted her teeth, eyes flickering with a storm of fear and rage. "Who? What are you?" The leader chuckled darkly. "You will know soon enough." He reached out, and the air itself twisted. Nyra froze in place, her body locked mid-motion, as if something had chained her to an invisible force. Kai barely had time to react before a shockwave blasted outward, throwing him back. He crashed against a tree trunk, pain exploding in his ribs. His vision blurred, but through the haze he saw Nyra trapped within a swirling vortex of darkness. Her eyes widened, her body struggling against the unseen force. The leader stepped closer, a hand outstretched toward her. "At last, it's time to reclaim what belongs to us." Nyra fought, but it was no use. Her silver glow began to flicker, as if her very essence was being drained. For the first time, Kai saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. Helplessness. Nyra's lips parted, and her voice, weak, strained, barely reached his ears. "Kai, please." Kai's heart pounded violently. Number. This wasn't how it ended. He forced himself up, every nerve in his body screaming in pain. His mind raced. He had no powers, no technology, nothing that could stand against this being. But he had one thing left: himself. He clenched his fists, steeled his resolve, and made his decision. No one takes her. and of the truth of the temple. The rain poured heavily, the droplets striking against the leaves like whispers of an impending storm. Kai had no idea how long he had been running. His legs burned, his chest heaved, but there was only one thought in his mind: saving Nyra. She had been taken by beings not of this world, and Kai knew one thing for certain: they wouldn't stop until they controlled her completely. But he couldn't let that happen. Kai's feet pounded against the muddy ground, his boots heavy with rain and dirt, but he didn't slow down. He pushed through the dense jungle, weaving through the paths they had fled through only hours ago. And then he saw it, the ancient temple. But something was different. The stone was no longer covered in moss and dust. Instead, a faint glow pulsed from its carvings, as if it had awoken from centuries of slumber. Kai skidded to a stop, breathing heavily. Whatever had happened when Nyra was taken, it had triggered something, and the answers were inside. Kai stepped forward, his hand instinctively gripping his knife, though he doubted it would help him against whatever force lay ahead. Inside, the vast chamber loomed over him, lit by mysterious blue light emanating from the walls. This time, it wasn't just a ruin, it was alive. As Kai moved deeper, his eyes scanned the murals and inscriptions on the temple's walls. And this time, he realized, these weren't just random carvings. They were telling a story. Kai stopped before a massive stone relief, larger and more intricate than anything else in the temple. At its center was a celestial body, a planet radiating with light, surrounded by towering figures. But around the planet, dark vessels loomed, enclosing it like predators circling prey. And below, a rift of pure darkness split the land apart. Kai hesitated before reaching out to touch the inscription. The moment his fingers brushed against the stone, a voice echoed in his mind. "You have come." Kai jerked back, eyes darting around. But there was no one there. "You seek to save her, don't you?" His breath hitched. Her, Nyra. His hands clenched. "Who are you?" "A guide. A remnant of what was lost." Kai swallowed hard. "How can I save her?" "Look up." Kai's gaze lifted to the ceiling, and for the first time he saw it. A circular symbol, glowing faintly, surrounded by ancient glyphs. And at its core, a gem radiating a strange light, as if it held the remnants of something alive. "This is the key. It will lead you to her." Kai didn't hesitate. He reached out, touching the gem at the center of the symbol. And in an instant, the temple reacted. The ground shook violently, the air crackling with energy. Before Kai, the space itself twisted and contorted, forming a shimmering gateway, a portal. Kai stepped back, his pulse racing. This was it. This was his way to get to Nyra. But before he could move forward, a shadow stepped through the portal. Kai's instinct screamed. A tall figure clad in blackened armor emerged, its glowing red eyes locking onto him. The voice that followed was cold and absolute. "You should not be here." Kai gritted his teeth, knife tightening in his grip. He had no chance against this thing, but he wasn't backing down. Kai lunged. The knife slashed through the air. But before it could make contact, the being simply raised a hand. A shock wave of pure energy blasted through the chamber. Kai was thrown backward, colliding hard against the temple's stone floor. The impact sent pain lancing through his body, his vision blurring from the force. And then, everything went dark. He was falling, drifting through endless void, weightless, trapped. And then, a voice. But it wasn't the enemy's voice. It was his own. "You really think you can save her?" Kai tried to speak, but no sound came out. "You're just human. Weak. Powerless." Something tightened around him, pulling him deeper into the abyss. Memories of Nyra, of their escape, of the moment she was taken, flashed before him. But they were distorted, twisted. The shadows were trying to rewrite the past, trying to make him believe he had already lost. And for a moment, he almost gave in. But then, a burst of silver light exploded through the darkness. The shadows recoiled, hissing in rage. Kai gasped for air, his body collapsing back onto solid ground. The temple's glowing gem was still in front of him, but now a small crack had formed on its surface. Kai stared at it, heart pounding. That darkness, it was real. It was alive, and it had tried to consume him. But he wasn't done. He wouldn't stop. He clenched his fists. He had one goal, one mission: find Nyra. No matter where she was, no matter what stood in his way, even if it meant stepping through the unknown. Kai took a deep breath and walked into the portal. The choice of destiny. The dark vortex swirled before Kai, like an abyss stretching into infinity. It emitted no light, no sound, only a crushing presence that felt like it was calling to him. Kai stood at its threshold, his hands still trembling from the residual energy that had surged through his body. He had no idea where it would take him, no idea if he'd ever come back. But he knew one thing: Nyra was on the other side, and if there was even a chance to save her, he wouldn't stop. He took a deep breath, clenched his fists, and stepped through. Everything around him fell into complete silence. No wind, no gravity, just an endless void, stretching in all directions. Kai felt himself drifting, as if he were caught between fragments of reality, glimpsing images that flickered just beyond his reach. He forced himself to stay calm, but a chill crept down his spine. He did not belong here, and yet something was watching him. A voice echoed through the space, deep, resonant, and coming from everywhere at once. Would you truly sacrifice everything for her? Kai's muscles tensed. He turned, but there was no one there. Who's speaking? The shadows shifted, and from within the swirling void, a figure emerged. A mirror image of himself, but its eyes were blackened, devoid of light. The shadow twisted, reforming as it spoke again. This time, in Kai's own voice. She is a goddess. You are just a man. Kai clenched his fists. So what? The shadow smirked, its expression cold. You really think you can change fate? Kai locked eyes with it, his voice unwavering. I don't care about fate. I just need to bring her home. For a moment, the shadow said nothing. Then it stepped back, vanishing into the void. The space around Kai began to tremble, and then a blinding light consumed everything. Kai hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the breath out of him. A cold wind swept over his skin, carrying with it the scent of ash and metal. He opened his eyes, and what he saw stole his breath away. A ruined city stretched before him, crumbling towers and shattered structures, bathed under a sky of faint, flickering silver light. It was a world on the brink of oblivion. Kai pushed himself up, his gaze scanning the ruins, and then he heard her. Kai, his heart pounded. He spun around, and there she was. Nyra, kneeling on the cold stone floor, bound in shackles of glowing energy, her once luminous form now dim. But she was alive. Kai couldn't stop himself. He ran to her. Nyra! She lifted her head, her silver eyes widening in disbelief. You found me. Kai dropped to his knees before her, his hand hesitantly brushing against her cheek, as if to make sure she was real. I promised, didn't I? Nyra's lips curved into a weak smile, but tears streamed down her face. I never thought you'd make it here. Kai laughed softly, his own voice shaking. Neither did I. But here I am. Then he turned, his expression hardening. And now, we're leaving. But before he could move, a cold voice cut through the air. You truly believe you can take her? Kai's muscles tensed. He looked up. Standing atop a crumbling pillar of stone was him, the commander of Nova. His black armor gleamed in the dim light, his piercing red eyes locked onto Kai. Kai rose to his feet, shielding Nyra behind him. The commander's tone was unreadable. Humans always believe they can defy destiny. He lifted a hand. Instantly, the chains around Nyra tightened, glowing brighter. She let out a soft cry, her energy flaring erratically. Kai's fist clenched. Let her go. The commander chuckled, a cold amusement in his voice. She does not belong to you. Kai stepped forward, eyes burning with determination. She belongs to herself, and I'm not letting you take her. The commander tilted his head as if assessing him. Then he raised a hand. and an instant later, a wave of dark energy erupted toward Kai. Kai couldn't dodge in time. The blast slammed into him, sending him flying backward. He crashed against the stone, pain shooting through his body. His vision blurred, but he refused to stay down. He forced himself up, his breath ragged, his body screaming in pain. But his eyes were burning with defiance. "You can't stop me." The commander's expression darkened. "Then you will die trying." And with that, he descended from the ruins, his blade forming from pure energy. Kai braced himself. He wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. The final battle. Kai did not step back. He knew he had no chance against the entity before him. But that didn't matter. He had made it here. He had found Nyra. And now he would not give up. The Nova commander descended from the stone platform, his shadow looming over Kai like an impending nightmare. There was no time to think. Kai pivoted, dodging the first strike by a hair's breadth, but the commander was faster than expected. He redirected his attack in a split second, slamming a dark energy punch straight into Kai's chest. Boom! Kai was sent flying, crashing hard against the stone floor. Pain erupted through his entire body. His lungs burned, his breath coming in sharp, ragged gas. But he couldn't stop. Nyra was still bound, still suffering. Kai gritted his teeth, planted his hands against the ground, and forced himself back up, his blue eyes blazing with determination. The Nova commander walked toward him slowly, as if savoring his inevitable victory. "You actually think you can fight?" Kai wiped the blood from his lip, his stare unwavering. "Number, but I'll do it anyway." The commander let out a cold laugh, then lifted his hand. A blade of pure darkness materialized in his grip, its edge crackling with red energy. Kai clenched his fists. No weapons, no powers, just himself. The commander didn't wait. He attacked. Kai barely dodged as the shadow blade came crashing down, slicing into the stone floor where he had stood just seconds before. 1 second. Kai saw an opening. He turned his body and launched a punch, aiming directly for the commander's side. It landed, and nothing happened. The commander didn't even flinch. He tilted his head, almost as if examining an insect that had just tried to bite him. Then, in a blur of motion, he grabbed Kai by the throat. Nyra screamed. She felt the heat of the dark energy tightening around Kai, saw the way the commander was about to crush him like a mere insect. She couldn't let this happen. She had lost everything once before. She would not lose Kai. She clenched her fists, and a silver light exploded from her body. The shackles of energy trembled, then shattered. The Nova commander sensed it instantly. He turned, and it was already too late. Nyra opened her eyes. Her true power was unleashed. A celestial storm erupted as Nyra rose to her feet, her form now radiating an ethereal glow. She was no longer the lost woman Kai had met in the ruins. She had become what she was meant to be. The Nova commander hesitated. For the first time, his red eyes showed caution. Nyra stepped forward, her voice calm, yet filled with power. "You have hunted me long enough." The commander said nothing, but he took a step back. Nyra raised her hand, and in a blink, a silver energy sword materialized in her grip. In the next instant, she attacked. The commander swung his dark blade, but the moment their weapons clashed, Nyra's silver energy shattered his darkness. A single clean strike. The commander was blasted backward, cracks splitting across his armor, dark energy leaking from his wounds. He gasped, trying to rise. But Nyra did not let him. She lifted her hand toward the sky, and an unstoppable wave of silver light consumed him. The commander's final scream was lost as his form was erased within the divine light. Then, he was gone. The battlefield fell silent. Kai slowly pushed himself to his feet, his eyes locked onto Nyra. She was still standing, her body glowing like a star. But something was wrong. Kai saw her form flickering, like she was being pulled away. His chest tightened. "Nyra?" She turned to him, her silver eyes now filled with sorrow. "Kai, the gate is calling me." Realization struck him. She had unlocked her full power, but the price was exile. She couldn't stay in this world anymore. Kai stepped forward, his hands trembling. No, no, you can't go. Nyra smiled softly, but tears rolled down her face. Kai, you saved me, and I will never forget that. His heart clenched. Then stay here. Nyra shook her head. I can't, but I promise. I will find a way back. Kai clenched his fists. Then swear it to me. Nyra hesitated. The portal behind her pulsed, calling her home. Then, she reached forward, pressing her palm to his chest, right over his heart. No matter how long it takes, I will come back to you. Kai knew there was nothing he could do. Nothing except hold on to her hand for one last moment. Her body was fading. She was becoming part of the light. And just before she disappeared completely, she whispered, "Thank you, Kai." Then, she was gone. Kai stood motionless, surrounded by the remains of a battle only he had survived. The ruins of a lost civilization around him. The ashes of a war now ended, but his heart felt empty. He looked up at the sky, where Nyra had vanished, and he knew their story wasn't over. The final promise. No more light, no more wind, no more Nyra. Kai stood among the ruins of the ancient temple, his heart heavier than it had ever been. She was gone. The world had taken something from him without warning, without mercy. Rain still fell, but this time it couldn't wash away the emptiness settling deep in his chest. Kai didn't know how long he had stood there. The battle was over, yet the world remained unaware. No one knew that, just hours ago, a forgotten goddess had waged war against relentless hunters. No one knew that a gate to another realm had been opened, and then sealed forever. Kai slowly knelt down, placing his hand on the exact spot where Nyra had disappeared. And then, his fingers brushed against something cold. A small silver crystal lay among the rubble. He picked it up, holding it in his palm. A soft glow pulsed from within, faint, but alive. He clenched his fist around it. He didn't know what came next, but he would not let the story end here. Days passed. Kai returned to the city, but nothing felt the same anymore. Everything around him, cars, people, neon lights, felt meaningless compared to what he had seen. He couldn't stop thinking about Nyra, about the gate, about the battle. He spent hours in his apartment, scouring every book, every legend, searching for anything related to Aurelia. Nothing. It was as if she had been erased from history itself. Then, one night, sitting in the darkness, staring at the silver crystal she left behind, it began to glow. Kai's eyes widened. The light from the crystal wasn't just flickering. It was moving, like it was trying to tell him something. He picked it up, watching closely. Then, on its surface, strange symbols began to form. But before Kai could react, his computer screen flickered. A second message appeared. "You are not the only one searching for her?" Kai didn't recognize the language, but when he reached out to touch it, a voice echoed inside his mind. A voice he knew too well. "Kai, find me." His breath caught in his throat. It couldn't be possible. Could it? Had she found a way to reach out to him? Was she alive? Kai didn't have the answers, but he knew one thing for certain. She was still out there. Kai took a deep breath, gripping the crystal tightly. He had no idea where she was. No clue if the gate could ever be opened again. But he would not stop. She had promised she would return, and now he would do everything to find her first. Kai rose to his feet, staring at the night sky, where the stars shimmered like fragments of fate. And for the first time in days, he smiled. Their story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Scene 10, a new beginning. Kai had made his choice. He didn't know what lay ahead. Did he have a lifetime of chasing shadows? Was this a hopeless search? Maybe, but he couldn't stop. Nyra was alive. He could feel it. And if she was still out there, he would find her. 3 months had passed since Kai returned to the city. By day, he lived like a normal person, taking photos, chasing stories, pretending life was the same. But by night, he spent every waking hour studying the silver crystal Nyra had left behind. It was unlike anything on Earth. He had tried everything: microscopes, magnetic scans, Heat sensors. Nothing. No signals. No energy. No signs from Nyra. The silence crept into his mind, whispering doubts. What if he was wrong? What if she was truly gone? What if that last message had been nothing more than an echo of a ghost? Then, one night, the crystal glowed again. Kai snapped awake, his heart hammering in his chest. The crystal wasn't just glowing, it was vibrating, like something was trying to reach him. He picked it up, feeling a gentle pulse of energy spread through his hand. Then, a flash, not a clear image, not a recognizable place, just a sky full of stars, a distant planet. And then, her voice, soft as the wind. Kai, find me. A cold shiver ran down his spine. She was alive. She was sending a signal. But from where? Kai stared at the crystal, determination burning in his eyes. If there was a signal, there had to be a way to trace it. And that meant he had work to do. For the next 3 weeks, Kai searched relentlessly. He studied everything he could find on interdimensional travel, ancient technology, and cosmic anomalies. He contacted scientists, scholars, UFO researchers, but they all said the same thing. Something like that doesn't exist. Kai didn't believe them. Nyra hadn't just vanished. She had left a trace. And then, finally, he found a name. Someone who might hold the key. A man the government tried to erase. A scientist who had once claimed to discover a new form of cosmic energy and was silenced for it. Dr. Adrian Locke. Kai tracked him down to a small remote town outside the city. Dr. Adrian Locke had been one of the top theoretical physicists in the world until he published a paper about energy signatures that could bend the fabric of reality. After that, he disappeared. Now he lived in seclusion, buried in forgotten knowledge. Kai knocked on the old wooden door, gripping the crystal inside his jacket pocket. The door creaked open, revealing an older man, silver-haired, eyes sharp behind thick glasses. "Who are you?" Kai took a deep breath. "I need your help." He pulled out the silver crystal, holding it up in the dim light. Dr. Locke's breath caught. His eyes widened. Then, a slow, disbelieving smile. "No, that's impossible." His hands trembled as he reached for the crystal. Then he stepped back, opened the door wider. "Come in. We have a lot to talk about." Inside the dimly lit study, only the silver glow of the crystal illuminated the room. Dr. Locke stared at it like he was seeing the answer to a lifetime of questions. "Do you have any idea what this really is?" Kai met his gaze, his voice firm. "It's the only connection I have to someone in another world. And I need to find her." Dr. Locke studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Then you've come to the right place." Kai's heartbeat quickened. He was closer than ever. To the truth. To Nyra. Kai had a lead. He didn't know where this road would take him, but he knew one thing. He wouldn't stop, because Nyra was waiting for him, and no matter how far across the stars she was, he would find her.